I'm a freelance videographer, and last summer I was driving through rural New Mexico on my way to film a small music festival in Albuquerque. I'd been on the road for about 7 hours, and around 11 p.m., I realized I was too exhausted to keep going. My eyes were heavy, and I'd already drifted onto the rumble strip twice. I needed to find a place to crash for the night. The problem was, I was in the middle of nowhere, just an empty 2-lane highway cutting through endless desert. No gas stations, no rest stops, no street lights, nothing. I was starting to think I'd have to pull over and sleep in my car when I finally saw it. A glowing neon sign, half burned out, flickering in the distance. I could just make out the words Silver Creek Motel. I pulled into the gravel lot. The place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s, an L-shaped, single-story building with maybe 20 rooms. The paint on the walls had once been blue, but now looked gray under the dim lights. Only 3 other cars were parked there, all old sedans coated in dust. The office sat in the corner unit. When I stepped inside, I was hit with the smell of old smoke and cleaning spray trying to hide mildew. Behind the counter sat a woman in her late 60s watching a small TV with static lines running through it. She barely glanced at me as I walked in. "Need a room?" she asked flatly. "Yeah, just for the night," I said. "$75," she replied. I pulled out my card, but she shook her head. "Cash only." I should have turned around right there, but I was too tired to argue. I handed her $80. She slid back a 10 and a metal room key attached to a diamond-shaped green tag with the number 9 etched into it. She didn't say anything else, just went back to watching her fuzzy TV. No receipt, no welcome, no mention of checkout time. Room 9 was at the far end of the building, last door on the left. The lights in the parking lot didn't reach that far, so I had to use my phone flashlight to find the lock. The key was old and rough, and it took a good half-minute of jiggling before it finally turned. When I stepped inside, the air hit me first, cold, stale, like the room hadn't been aired out in weeks. I flicked on the light and just stood there. Worn red carpet, cigarette burns near the bed, yellowed wallpaper peeling at the corners, and a small TV from another century perched on a crooked dresser. There was a bathroom to my right, a closet without a door, and a single window with thick floral curtains already drawn shut. I closed the door behind me and tried to lock it. The deadbolt was one of those tiny brass knobs you have to twist manually, but it wouldn't budge. I pushed, twisted, even leaned into it. Nothing. It was completely jammed. The chain lock was missing entirely, just 2 small screw holes where it used to be. "Great," I muttered to myself. "Broken lock, middle of nowhere, perfect." But I was so tired, I didn't care anymore. The door at least shut tight, and nobody knew I was there. I plugged in my phone, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed on the bed. The mattress was uneven and creaked when I moved, but it didn't matter. I set an alarm for 6 and closed my eyes. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when a sound woke me up. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, soft, rhythmic, but then I realized it was real. Footsteps. Someone was walking back and forth outside my door. I froze, listening. The footsteps were slow and steady, pacing from one side of the door to the other. Then they stopped. I held my breath. A few seconds later, they started again, back and forth, back and forth. I glanced at my phone. It was 2:46 a.m. "Maybe it's just another guest," I whispered to myself. "Maybe someone's having a smoke." But the steps didn't move away. They just kept pacing. Then they stopped again. And that's when I heard the doorknob turn. My heart jumped into my throat. I watched the handle twist slowly, then stop. It turned the other way, then again. Someone was testing it, trying to see if it was unlocked. I wanted to call out, ask who was there, but something in my gut screamed, "Don't." I stayed completely still, staring at the handle as it moved back and forth. Then it stopped. Silence. And then I heard the breathing. Someone was standing on the other side of that door, breathing heavily. I could hear it through the thin wood, ragged, wheezy breathing, like whoever it was had been running. I slowly reached for my phone, thinking I should call the front desk or maybe the cops. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The breathing didn't stop. Then a voice spoke, low, muffled, but close. At first I couldn't understand it. Then the words became clear. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." It was a man's voice, flat, emotional, not angry, not pleading, just stating it. "Let me in." I stared at the door, paralyzed. I dialed the number for the front desk that was printed on a small card next to the lamp. It rang and rang, but no one picked up. "Let me in," the voice said again, louder. I hung up and tried again. Still nothing. I was about to call the police when suddenly the voice stopped. The breathing stopped. Silence. I didn't move. I just sat there, waiting. Nothing. Whoever had been outside was gone. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I sat upright in bed, phone in hand, watching the door until sunlight started bleeding through the curtains around 6:30. When it was bright enough outside, I grabbed my gear, stuffed everything back into my bag, and left without looking back. I went to the office to complain, maybe get a refund. The same woman was sitting behind the counter. She looked at me like I was crazy when I told her what happened. "There's nobody else staying on that side," she said flatly. "You must have been dreaming." But I knew I wasn't. I knew what I heard. I walked back toward my car, and as I passed my room, I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. On the wall, right beside my doorframe, something had been scratched into the paint. It was faint, like it had been there for years, but I could still read it. It said, "He never checked out." I got in my car and drove until the motel disappeared from my rearview mirror. I don't know what it meant, and I don't want to know. All I know is I'll never stay at a roadside motel. Redwood Pines Lodge. I used to work night shift at a motel off Highway 93 in northern Arizona. This was about 5 years ago, when I was paying my bills by doing freelance videography gigs during the day and taking whatever night work I could get. The job at the motel was easy enough. I worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and most nights were dead quiet. Maybe 1 or 2 travelers checked in during my entire shift. The place was called the Redwood Pines Lodge, though there were no redwoods anywhere nearby, just dry desert brush and a few scraggly pines out front. 30 rooms, 1 small office, a vending machine that ate your quarters, and a swimming pool filled with sand. Most of our guests were truckers, construction workers passing through, or folks who didn't have anywhere else to go. My job was to check people in, answer calls from the rooms, and make sure nothing caught fire. I spent most nights doing video edits on my laptop, the glow from the screen the only light besides the neon sign outside that buzzed constantly. About 3 months into the job, something happened that made me quit for good. It was a Tuesday night. The rain had been falling steady for hours, rare for Arizona. Around 1 a.m., a man came in from the parking lot soaked to the bone. He looked about mid-40s, carrying a duffel bag that was dripping water. He said he'd been driving since Las Vegas and needed a place to sleep. I checked him in, gave him the key to room 19, and took the $45 cash he handed me. He didn't want a receipt, just the room. I watched him walk down the row, go inside, and shut the door. About an hour later, the phone on the desk rang. I picked it up and said, "Front desk." There was nothing but breathing at first. Then a quiet voice said, "He's in my room." I asked who was calling and what room they were in. The voice said, "Room 19. There's someone in here with me. I can hear him breathing." I told him he was the only person staying in room 19. He'd just checked in an hour ago. The voice got shaky, almost panicked. "No, you don't understand. He's standing right next to the bed." Then the line went dead. I tried calling back, but no one answered. I thought maybe he was drunk, maybe high, or playing some prank. But something about the fear in his voice made me grab the master key and a flashlight and head down the walkway. The rain hadn't stopped. By the time I reached room 19, I was soaked through. I knocked once, then again, calling out that it was the front desk. No answer. I slid the key into the lock and opened the door. The room was empty. Lights off, bed made, no duffel bag, no jacket, nothing. It looked like nobody had ever checked in. I stood there confused. I knew I'd seen him go in. I went back to the office, checked the registry, room 19, paid cash, checked in at 1:06 a.m. I tried calling the room again. This time, someone answered immediately. That same whispering voice said, "Why did you let him in?" Then silence. I just sat there, frozen. Then I grabbed my flashlight and went back out. When I opened the door again, the lights were already on. The guy was sitting on the bed, soaked jacket still on, head in his hands. I asked if he was okay, if he was the one who had called me. He looked up, eyes bloodshot like he'd been crying. "I didn't call you," he said. "I just woke up and you were standing here." I told him I'd been in the room 10 minutes ago and it was empty. He stared like I was insane. He pointed to his duffel bag, his things, everything right where they should be, said he'd been asleep. I apologized, backed out, and left. Back in the office, I checked the security feed. One camera covered the row of rooms. I rewound the footage. There he was, walking to room 19, going inside. Then, 20 minutes later, the door opened. He came out, walked to his car, and drove away. His car left the lot at 1:32 a.m. But that was impossible. I'd just seen him. He was still in the room. Then, at 2:46 a.m., the same car came back. Same plate, same man. He got out, went back to room 19, and went inside. I replayed it over and over. There was only one registration entry, only one name. Then the phone rang again. "He's here again," the voice said. "Please help me." This time I could hear another voice faintly in the background, talking, but I couldn't make out what it was saying. I asked what room he was in. There was a pause. Then, "I don't know. It says room 19, but nothing looks right. The windows are wrong. The walls are wrong." I told him to get out, to come to the office. He said, "I can't. The door won't open. I'm locked in." Then a scream, loud, raw, terrified. I ran to room 19. The door was locked from the inside. I tried the key, wouldn't turn. The deadbolt was jammed. I pounded on the door, shouting his name. Nothing. I ran back to the office and called the cops. They showed up about 10 minutes later, 2 deputies. I told them everything. They followed me to room 19. One knocked and announced, "Sheriff's Department." No answer. He told me to open it. I tried the key again. This time, the deadbolt wasn't set. The door opened easily. The room was empty. Bed perfectly made. TV off. No bag, no jacket. They searched every inch. Closet, bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. One of them asked if I'd been drinking. I pulled up the camera feed. They watched the man check in, then watched him leave, then watched him come back. The deputy frowned. "So where is he now?" I didn't have an answer. They filed a report and left. Nothing stolen, nobody missing. Around 5 a.m., just before dawn, I was staring out the office window when the door to room 19 opened. Someone stepped out. It was him, wet jacket, duffel bag in hand. He looked around the parking lot confused, like he didn't recognize where he was. Then he turned and looked straight at the office. Even from that distance, I could tell he was terrified. He turned around, walked back into the room, and shut the door. I left my badge and keys on the counter, wrote a quick note saying, "I quit," and drove away before the sun fully came up. I never went back, not even to pick up my last paycheck. A few months later, I heard they'd shut down room 19 for good. Guests complained about hearing voices, seeing someone standing by their bed, or waking up in a room that didn't look like the one they fell asleep in. But what really gets me, what keeps me up some nights, is what I found online last year. A local article about a man found dead in room 19 of the Redwood Pines Lodge. Cause of death? Suicide. Same name, same signature, same night. I don't work night shifts anymore, and no matter where I travel, I never stay in room 19. Ever again. I've always been uneasy about staying in roadside motels, especially the older ones where the locks barely work. This happened to me about 3 years ago. I was driving from Nevada to Colorado to film a documentary for a small production company I freelance for. The plan was to make the whole trip in one day. Big mistake. By the time I crossed into Utah, it was almost midnight, and I was running on fumes. I pulled off at a small town I'd never heard of, can't even remember the name now. There was a motel right off the exit, one of those old, privately owned places that time seemed to forget. The sign out front read, "Moonlight Rest Inn," glowing weakly in flickering neon shaped like a crescent moon. The parking lot was nearly empty. I parked near the office and walked in. A young guy sat behind the counter, maybe early 20s, scrolling through his phone. When he looked up, he seemed genuinely surprised someone was checking in this late. "Need a room?" he asked, putting down his phone. "Yeah, just for the night," I said. He nodded. $45, cash or card?" "Cash," I said, fishing some bills out of my wallet. He handed me a key card, not an actual key, which felt like a small relief. "You're in room 6, around back." "Thanks," I said. The motel was shaped like a horseshoe, the office and lot in the open end. I walked along the outer hallway toward the back where room 6 was. It was darker back there. One flickering bulb above the vending machine was the only light. Inside, the room was standard. 2 beds, a small TV, a table, a couple of chairs, and a faint smell of bleach. But something felt off the second I stepped in. It was freezing. Not just cold, unnaturally cold. I checked the air conditioner under the window. It wasn't even on. I turned on the heater and set my bag down, rubbing my arms. The hum of the heater filled the silence, and I tried to settle in. That's when I noticed the mirror. It was a tall, full-length mirror bolted to the wall beside the bathroom door. And something about it just didn't look right. The reflection was slightly off, like the angle didn't quite match where I stood. I stepped closer, moved my hand, and saw a delay. Barely half a second, but noticeable enough to make my stomach twist. I stared for a few seconds longer, then laughed quietly to myself. I was exhausted. I'd been driving all day. My eyes were probably playing tricks on me. I brushed my teeth, changed into a t-shirt and sweats, and got into bed, the one closest to the door. I shut off the lights, closed my eyes, but I couldn't get comfortable. Something wasn't right. After a few minutes, I realized what it was: the cold. The heater had been running for at least 20 minutes, but the air hadn't warmed at all. My breath came out in visible puffs. Confused, I got up, crouched by the heater. It was blowing hot air, but somehow the room was colder. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I turned toward the mirror and froze. In the reflection, I saw someone standing there. A woman. Long, dark hair, pale skin, a white nightgown that brushed the floor. I flicked the light switch. Instantly, she was gone. The mirror showed only me. The messy bed, the second bed untouched, the small table, the TV, nothing else. My pulse thundered. I turned the lights off again, slowly. After my eyes adjusted, I looked back. She was there again. Same spot, same nightgown, perfectly still, staring into the mirror. But when I looked directly at the space where she should have been, the middle of the room, there was nothing. She existed only in the mirror. I flicked the lights on. She vanished. Lights off. She returned. I stood there in silence, gripping my phone, too scared to move. Finally, I convinced myself I was hallucinating from exhaustion. I turned the lights back on, crawled under the blanket, and left them on this time. But the air kept getting colder. My fingers went numb. Frost began to form on the inside of the window glass. I told myself I'd try to sleep with the lights on. I shut my eyes. But I couldn't stop glancing at that mirror. As long as the lights stayed on, the reflection looked normal. But deep down, I knew, if they went off, she'd be there again. At around 3 in the morning, the power went out. The heater clicked off, the light vanished. The room fell into absolute darkness. I reached for my phone, fumbling, trying to turn on the flashlight. Before I could find it, I heard it. Footsteps. Inside the room. Bare feet, soft, deliberate, moving slowly toward my bed. I froze. My throat went dry. Finally, I found my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut across the room. Empty. But when I aimed it at the mirror, my stomach dropped. She was walking in it. I saw her reflection moving toward me, step by step, but there was nothing in the room itself. Only in the glass was she visible, gliding closer, her hair covering her face. I couldn't breathe. I jumped out of bed, ran to the door, and fumbled with the key card. It beeped after what felt like forever. I yanked the door open and bolted outside into the night. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I jumped in, locked the doors, turned the heater on full blast, and sat there shaking until dawn. When the sun came up, I forced myself to go back. The power was back on. The room looked exactly as before. Calm, clean, harmless. I grabbed my bag, checked out, and headed to the front desk. The same kid from the night before was behind the counter, phone in hand. I asked, "Hey, has anyone ever complained about room 6? Anything weird happen in there?" He hesitated, frowned slightly. "No idea what you're talking about." I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, he called out quietly, "Hey, don't tell anyone I said this, but I'd never stay in that room." "Why?" I asked. He just shook his head and went back to scrolling through his phone. I left without another word, and I've never driven through that town again. Even now, whenever I stay at a motel, I cover the mirrors. Because sometimes what you see in the reflection isn't what's really there. And sometimes what's in the reflection is trying to find a way out.